And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines and simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. It's already Friday.
Thank goodness.
Flew by this week for me.
Did it really? That's a good thing, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
We can't win, can we? It's the brutal early hours. We're very disgruntled by at least one thing a day. Me, it's the cold this week. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a busy week for me, so I think that's why I flew by. But yeah, before I knew it, it's the weekend. So yeah, I guess there's some good news in that respect. I hope you're doing better though.
Sure. I'll be better after the weekend. I'll try anyway. Thanks, right, listeners, for bearing with me, by the way.
Hang in there.
Let's jump into our keyword news portion of the day. We're going to try to clarify some of the major headlines for our listeners, starting with our first pick of the day.
Rate freeze.
So as widely expected, the Bank of Korea held interest rates steady at 3.5% for the eighth straight time. The BOK says a rate has peaked, but it's not considering a rate cut anytime soon. So seemingly unfazed by the looming default from construction loans particularly, I think the central bank is committed to battling inflation first and foremost.
Yeah, so these kind of wait-and-see approaches comes amid market concerns over the debt-ridden builder Taeyang ENC. The concerns have been escalating. Now, creditors have recently actually approved their debt restructuring plan, so we'll have to see how that progresses. Now, the rate freeze also comes amid concerns about the potential risks of loan defaults, particularly in real estate project financing, which has been a bit of a concern lately. Also, inflation has not fallen below the 3% range for five consecutive months, and the increase in household debt is also not conclusively curbed as well. Now, the BOK hinted its policy rate may have peaked after leaving the rate unchanged, but it refrained from signaling any imminent dovish policy pivot amid lingering concerns about the country's high household debts. Governor Lee Chang-yong said inflation continued moderating while external risks from volatile international oil prices and the Middle East crisis have eased. But he stressed that it is still too early to discuss any rate cuts as of now. He said the bank needs to be assured that inflation slows to the target level before any cuts are made. As I said, inflation is well above 3% at the moment. It has slowed, but the pace of the slowing has kind of deteriorated a little bit as of late. So the BOK certainly wants it to near its 2% target level. Now, the prospects for any early rate cut have also been dampened after the U.S. Federal Open Market Committee released minutes of their November meeting last month. It shows that most officials wanted to keep rates high for some time, and so that's why this kind of is sparking the BOK not to further that gap even more. Now, for the economy, the BOK anticipates that domestic consumption and construction investment will recover slowly, but exports will continue to grow, leading to an overall improvement. The growth rate for this year is expected to align with the projection in November, which was 2.1%. So there you have it. So yeah, there's still some indicators pointing to the fact that inflation may still be hovering around that 3% or just above it. So that's why we won't be seeing any rate cuts anytime soon.
All right, let's move on to our second keyword of the day.
Economic meeting.
So President Yoon Suk-yeol has held a meeting with members of the National Economic Advisory Council to discuss economic affairs. It seems that he's very adamant about ensuring that no one gets left behind in the fierce competition. Let's get the latest.
Yeah, so the NEAC is a presidential advisory body providing advices to the president on various economic issues. Its duties include studying the economic policies of the Korean government from the viewpoints different from those of the government and providing ideas to support the government effort to minimize adverse effects. The meeting was organized to share the government's philosophy with new members of the council as well and to discuss the direction of economic policies. Yoon emphasized the importance of a free market economy, highlighting its role in bringing prosperity to all citizens. He noted the government's responsibility as well to ensure fair and effective competition, while also supporting those who might struggle to keep up. And he underscored that true freedom includes access to education, culture, and a basic economic livelihood. He concluded by stressing that all government policies, whether economic, social, diplomatic, or security related, aim to ensure that the benefits of growth are shared by all citizens. And he called on the NEAC to offer frank and insightful advice to the government. After all, the council itself is to basically give some constructive criticism to the government, something that might be difficult in-house. And he also presented official appointments to 4 members of the council as well, of course, all being experts in their field outside of the government and not politicians per se. So it gives them a little bit of a more objective feedback in terms of economy related issues.
All right, keeping our keyword news in the economy section, there's a reason why Bitcoin prices certainly shoot up. Our third keyword of the day.
Bitcoin ETF.
All right, so the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has approved rule changes to allow the creation of Bitcoin ETFs in the U.S. This has sparked interest in Korea about the feasibility of launching similar ETFs domestically, but not so fast. What's the latest?
Yeah, so in the US is basically the key there. So it's yet to be kind of discussed or talked about here in Korea because there's, of course, some legal hurdles to overcome. Now, the move itself significantly increases kind of accessibility to these virtual assets and cryptocurrency. Previously, trading Bitcoin was only possible through these crypto exchanges, but now it will be as straightforward as stock investing, making or marking a shift from speculative trading to a more formal investment method. But even stocks are sometimes speculative as well. So that's another area that's for another discussion. But anyway, local crypto stocks rallied, of course, after the SEC's decision. However, given that Bitcoin's legal status in Korea is yet to be determined, the likelihood of such listings kind of seems distant for now, especially here in the country. Financial authorities have also concluded that the 11 ETFs approved by the SEC are not available for trading by domestic investors, reiterating the ban on crypto ETFs still. Now, while stock indexes, bond indexes, commodities like gold and oil, as well as derivative product prices can be underlying assets for ETFs here in Korea, Bitcoin does not fit into the category of basic assets as per the Capital Markets Act. Also, there has been no serious discussion or review by the authorities or political circles on defining Bitcoin as an asset here in Korea. Therefore, the SEC's decision is not really expected to have an immediate significant impact on the domestic ETF market. Moreover, Bitcoin trades at different prices on different exchanges, which kind of contradicts the so-called one price principle, making domestic listing challenging for the time being. However, there is kind of a welcoming atmosphere in the asset management industry here in Korea regarding the SEC's approval. The industry has shown an open stance towards welcoming kind of a new market for Bitcoin spot ETFs. Also, the Bank of Korea governor, Lee Chang-yong, said Bitcoin seems to have established itself as an investment asset, adding it is time to test the value and safety of Bitcoin ETFs. Now, whether this will influence the financial authorities and the government to change their stance regarding Bitcoin ETFs remains to be seen. But for the moment, not so much.
All right, let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
Forced labor ruling.
So the Korea Supreme Court has once again ruled in favor of a Korean victim of wartime forced labor, ordering a Japanese company to pay a significant amount of compensation. So it upholds another appellate court ruling. What's the latest, Adam?
Right, so the top court ordered Japanese steelmaker Nippon Steel to pay 100 million won plus additional compensation for delayed payment to the wife and to children of the late victim. Now, the victim, only identified by his surname Kim, was taken from his home in Korea to Japan in March 1943 and was forced to work in a mill for Nippon Steel without being paid. He was promised payment upon returning home, but he didn't receive a single penny. And he died in 2012, and the family of the late victim filed a suit against the Japanese company in 2015, In the latest ruling, the top court acknowledged that the plaintiff had faced obstacles that prevented them from objectively exercising their rights as victims of forced mobilization during Japanese colonial rule. It upheld that the plaintiff's right to individual compensation has not expired under the 1965 Korea-Japan Claims Agreement. The Japanese government, however, did still expressed regret, claiming it did go against the 1965 agreement. The rhetoric and response that it has been making in the previous rulings and similar rulings that were held in separate cases back in December. But the Japanese companies are unlikely to continue refusing. Are likely to continue refusing to pay, as it has been doing, and therefore Seoul's foreign ministry said it will continue to push for the government's plan to compensate the victims through this public-funded foundation that has been funded by Korean companies. That's also an area of contention and something that Korean victims aren't really welcoming of. They're kind of refusing to get paid from that particular foundation. They want payment directly from the Japanese companies as well as an apology. But that is the latest ruling, and possibly more rulings similar to that probably going to be made here in the Supreme Court.
Because it doesn't seem like the third-party compensation relays or echoes anything close to an apology. It just looks like kind of like a Band-Aid on a wound from the victim's perspective, which is something that they've repeatedly said, which is why we keep going back in the same circles. Can we force these Japanese companies to pay up? Unfortunately, it's really tough.
Yeah, so overall, it's a matter of principle isn't it? Rather than just getting the money and the compensation. It's far more than just the monetary value, but kind of these families want a glimpse of remorse from these Japanese companies and the government as well, for that matter.
All right, let's move on to our final keyword of the day.
Parental support.
So beginning this year, families with infants will see a significant increase in the parental allowance provided to ease their economic burdens. This is, in the big picture, to tackle Korea's pretty sad birth rate. Tell us the details.
Yeah, so the Welfare Ministry announced that from this month, families with children aged 0 to 11 months will receive a monthly parental allowance of 1 million won. And those with 1-year-old children, or those between 12 and 23 months, will receive 500,000 won per month. Now, previously, the parental allowance for the respective age groups were 700,000 won and 350,000 won, so a significant bump up there. Now, introduced last year, this parental allowance aims to compensate for the income loss due to childbirth and child rearing. It aims to ensure that parents and children can spend more time together at home. It also aims to ease the economic burden of raising children. There's been a recent survey actually conducted where almost a third of the respondents said that the cost burden of raising children was one of the reasons why they're delaying having children in the first place. So that's why the government is trying to tackle that particular area of concern. Now, parents can apply for the allowance at their local community centre or online. To be eligible for the allowance for the first time, it must be applied for within 60 days of the child's birth. If the application is made within this period, the allowance will be retroactive from the month of birth. However, applications made after the 60 days will only be eligible for the allowance from the month of application. So basically, you'll be getting the money later than sooner. Now, the parental allowance is deposited as cash into the parent's or child's bank account. However, families who use daycare centres will receive the allowance as a childcare voucher of a certain maximum amount. Now, if the voucher amount is less than the overall parental allowance that is eligible, the difference will be provided in cash. So, for example, if you're one of those eligible to be paid 1 million won a month, then maybe just over 500,000 will be given in vouchers and the rest will be given in cash.
All right. Thank you very much, Anna, for today's coverage. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Have a brilliant weekend. See you next week.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.